the recording, so you can go ahead and call the meeting to order whenever you like.
Okay, so who are we missing, Brian? Is
Wait, I've got Joanne and Jay in the other side of the list here. Let me just promote them.
there's Joanne.
Hi there.
Hey,
So I think once okay, you're gonna have video, or are you gonna be just in the dock?
I'm in the dock here. Wait a minute, all right, let me see if I can get it.
there he
There you
is.
go.
There you are. There you are.
I don't see me.
Well, we see you.
Oh, yeah, there we go.
All right.
Yes, Patty.
Yep.
Well, I've been here. I just keep going off and on.
Oh, okay.
I think everybody's here, so I'll call it to order. What time is it? It's 7:03. You're recording, so that's good. Welcome, everybody. We'll do roll call, and you just say your name and that you're here. Larry Fish here.
Henry Thayer here.
Tricia Gardner. Here.
Jay Newsom here.
Joanna Esposito here.
Brian Smith here.
Tom,
Yeah, Tom Ritliff here.
Susan, unmute yourself and say you're here, please.
Susan Marcus here.
Thank you. Everybody's here? Okay. So first order of business is the minutes.
Okay, I have a comment. It says that I'm the secretary. Doesn't say that?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, that's not right.
Yeah, I don't think we have one, right?
We don't have a secretary.
Okay.
I used to be the copy editor, but I haven't even done that job very much recently. So, but I'm definitely not the secretary.
I thought Brian was the secretary. No?
Yes.
No, I think that we had a conversation then and we didn't think we needed one because we had staff.
Yeah, we have
Okay.
staff.
That makes sense.
Okay, I will make that correction.
Thank you.
Let the record show Brian is of council is on. And James, you want to introduce yourself and say hi?
Yeah, hello, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Fish. Jamie Rabbit, new planning director. Thank you for letting me sit in tonight. I know you're in good hands with Brian. So he's sitting in the town hall this evening.
Yeah.
Usually he's in Hawaii or somewhere.
I am being professional for this meeting.
So, again, I want to say, the people of South Kingston have been extremely welcoming. We have great staff we're working with. You have a good town manager, a good council. So again, look forward to working with you and EDC and doing some good things in town. Not that you haven't done anything good. Again, got a beautiful community to be proud of, and I want to, help you along where you need it. So,
James, you want to tell everybody a little bio on you, where you came from, where you've been doing?
Thank you, Mr. Ray. As a planner, I'm a member of the American Institute of Certified Planners, member of American Planning Association, also a member of the Congress of New Urbanism. I have 32 years of experience as a planner. I've worked for 30 plus municipalities as their planner on projects, and probably worked in a total of 50 between Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and Connecticut. I've worked as a regional planner for Northeast Council of Governments, which is the equivalent of an MPO for Rhode Island. Rhode Island's small, so you only have one MPO. But in Connecticut, we were up to 11. Northeastern Connecticut, Southeast Connecticut, for 20 years with 22 municipalities. That covered East Lyme all the way over to Stonington, up to Voluntown, and west to Colchester, back down to East Lyme. I worked as the planning director in Simsbury, Connecticut for 3 years. There the department staffed both the building department, code enforcement, land use, and zoning also. And, I have a host of experience on small projects, large projects. I've staffed architectural review boards. I want to say for fun, I love architecture. I love design review aspects associated with development. And again, I think South Kingstown's done has had a wonderful effort and time to control development in a timely, appropriately scaled manner. And we'd like to work with you to continue that, but also allow some economic development. I don't want to say growth. Growth is, not always a good word, but appropriately scaled with an appropriate fit, growth will occur. I think as a community, you get to decide how, when that occurs and what it looks like in the end. And I think to date, you've done a pretty good job with that. I'm sure you all can tell me the exceptions. And what I would love to offer you is that, feel free to contact me in the office or shoot me an email as we enter in a few design endeavors and regulatory endeavors. I would like to know what you think are the assets in the community, what you think you would like to potentially redo from a development standpoint, and then what you think has been done absolutely wonderfully and you would like to replicate it if another development or business came into town. Kind of the good, the bad, and the ugly. I want to know from the residents' perspective and the commission's perspective of, what are the assets in town and what would you like if you could have a do-over? What would the do-over do? All right.
Great. Anybody, feel free to chime in as long as you're on the call. That goes for you too, Brian. Brian's been with us for one meeting, but we run a kind of loose ship. We have a variety of people's opinion, and we come at it from a lot of different backgrounds. And I like that. I like having other opinions, and we can learn from others' ideas. And it's a working collaboration, I think, on this committee. And everybody should have a say and feel free to give their opinions at any time. And I might not agree with them, but that doesn't mean they're not valid. So that's how we do it. And there's some structure, but we can go into a lot of different areas. And I think you'll hear a little bit of the good, the bad, and the ugly tonight, looking at the agenda. So,
Mr. Fisher, if I can make a point.
Yep.
I'm here to help you articulate the town's vision. I'm not here to impose my vision on you. So I'm here to work with you to forward your vision for the community, your vision for economic development.
Economic Development Committee meeting.
Right. I would say not your, but the committees. You're right. Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right. Let's get going then. Approval of the minutes. Let's go back to that. With the one change. Anybody else have anything else? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve as amended?
Motion to approve.
All right, Tom,
Sorry.
Patty, you second?
Sure, second.
All right, any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Nays? Ayes have it, unanimous. All right, any correspondence or public comments?
No correspondence,
Okay,
or any public comment that's been presented to the department.
okay. Let's then go right into the funding opportunities that we started talking about last month. And James, this is kind of tied to our Saugatucket development project that we're dealing with and envisioning. We don't have a final product, but to get to what we want it to be, it will need some funding. And so we're evaluating different grants that might be out there because the school department is going to take all our money in the town budget. And we realize that. So we're realists on this committee. So Brian, you and Joanne, you want to talk you have anything to update the committee on the grants?
Well, we've been searching for funding opportunities, not only for that particular project, but for other projects that we might be interested in town. So as far as the river project, I haven't seen any funding opportunities for that one, but I did run across HUD has an announcement out that I read this morning, and it's called a Main Street program, and it's to provide grants to small communities to assist in the renovation of historic or traditional central business district or Main Street area by replacing unused, obsolete commercial space and buildings with affordable housing units. The objectives of the program are to redevelop central business districts, Main Street areas, preserve historic or traditional Main Street area properties by replacing unused commercial space in buildings with affordable housing units, enhance economic development efforts in Main Street areas, and provide affordable housing in Main Street areas. So I just ran across that this morning. It's not a lot of money in that program, 500,000, but we could apply for it just to get money for planning, to plan a project. I know we've talked about this before about trying to find affordable housing, particularly in the service sector. And we have a fair amount of commercial space that's vacant. So I think it's something that we should at least think about.
You have any ideas of locations that you kind of have in the back of your head, or anybody else have?
I think the upper stories of the buildings on the right-hand side of the road on Lower Main Street have some potential for that.
Like Sheldon's?
You like Sheldon's and like the one up by Phil's.
Yeah.
Well, all that matters is in there, I guess.
Yeah.
The upstairs, they were kind of converted to offices, and I'm not sure that the offices are even being utilized now. And they were in pretty bad shape in the upstairs in terms of flooring and stuff like that. They need a lot of renovation. Those two buildings, I think, would present some potential for some housing units. Maybe not 100, maybe more like 6 or 7 or 10, but it's a small town project. And if I'm listening correctly to Brian, and that would be a small project for a small town.
Who owns that building? Who owns the All That Matters building?
The guy that owns All That Matters, and then next to it, right attached to it, is Dennis Bell with the Bell block, and then and right attached to that is Sheldon's.
Yeah. No, but they're not attached because the fills is in between and
Right.
yeah.
But you know what I mean.
Okay, so do we know the name of the guy who owns All That Matters?
It used to be the Dwyers, Dwyers. Dave was the husband and
Yeah, what's her name? Jill? No,
Joan.
Joan.
But they've sold it. Well, I don't know whether they sold the property. They sold, Joan sold All That
That
Matters
Matters, yeah.
to the manager. And I don't know whether she still owns the property. Her building is in pretty decent shape. Bell's building is in very, very good shape.
Yeah, but Bell's building is owned by Bell.
Correct.
And he's not interested in doing anything.
No, well, I don't think there's much to be done on his, but Sheldon's and the Dove and Distaff up above them, I think would be the targets. But Brian, the HUD money can't be used on a private property project, I wouldn't think.
Yes, it can. It can.
Yeah,
can.
yeah.
Something commercial, as long as it's commercial.
Okay.
Who owns the that yellow barn structure that's on Robinson Street? That's next to the fire.
Oh,
Fire
the
station.
sawmill?
Silversmith. Silver, I think it's Silversmith. He owns that.
What's in there?
A bunch of stuff.
Office.
Cowabunga and the t-shirts, you mean? That
No,
building?
Cowabunga's not in there anymore. They're across the street in Wayne's building.
Yeah, Susan's
Okay.
talking about the old sawmill.
Oh,
Yeah,
got it.
That's
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
You got Pete?
Matcha Dimes has a whole floor in there that they rent from. And somebody that's very active in that locally is George from the Muse. So I can ask him about that.
So it did, so after Brian clarified which building I meant, did that mean it wasn't owned by Silverstone?
No, Silversmith.
Silversmith,
That's
So,
the last owner I knew.
okay.
so we would have to contact those people and see if they're
Yes.
interested in co-applying with us. I guess the town has to apply and the property owners have got to certainly agree to it.
Right.
The town is the applicant.
Yeah,
Right. Okay. I think Sheldon's would be ideal.
Yeah, it would be, but I can foresee some problems. One is that Scott Hallberg wants to own that building, so Sheldon has given him right of first refusal, which annoys me no end. But and then the second thing is that that he uses that space and he thinks that's important for his old mattress building and whatever. So I don't know. He's interested. If it meant, I mean, it's worth talking to him, but
Right. That's all I'm saying.
yeah,
I mean, if it's free money and he gets to renovate
Yeah.
his building,
yeah,
then it's okay.
yeah. He has to take off the asbestos siding. He's very keen to take off the asbestos siding on that building.
Hmm.
And that would be a huge asset to the historic well-being
Reservation.
of Main Street if he could do that. And he will
Right.
never be able to afford to do that. So,
That's correct. That's why it immediately came to mind.
yeah, yeah.
The only drawback you're going to find in persuading somebody like that to participate in a program like this is that those affordable units are likely going to be deed restricted for a period of time, probably at least 30 years. And they may not want to be, connected to that if they think they may be trying to sell the building or have other uses they might have in mind for those spaces.
Right. Well, Scott Hallberg is the one that's going to put residential above the Weibel block right around the corner.
Yeah.
And his partner in crime is Eric Bell, which is the son of Dennis Bell that is adjacent to him and has totally renovated his building.
Yeah,
Okay.
and Scott Halberg will not want deed restricted affordable housing, although the town might require that he have some in order to,
Right, and I wouldn't say he wouldn't want it if he got free money to develop it and then he doesn't have a higher cost of acquiring it and everything else. He might be thankful that he'll have full tenancy. I don't know.
well,
But I
and we
can
don't,
certainly talk to him.
yeah, Brian, do we know whether a building could be mixed use, could have both market rate and affordable housing in it?
I've seen that done before. Yeah, that's
well,
not a
I'm-
problem.
Not you, Brian,
Oh.
Brian Smith, I'm sorry. Sorry, what are we
The
gonna
other
do here?
Brian.
It's gonna be a
Brian-
problem.
Brian Smith, does it seem as you read that statement from HUD that it can have market rate?
I believe so. I have the entire notice. I haven't read through the whole thing.
You haven't.
No, because I just
It just
got the
came in-
notice this morning, and so I need
Before
I need to dig into the weeds on that one.
Yeah.
Before we get too excited, is it a $500,000 total grant or the grants up to
No.
500,000
Per project,
per project? Okay,
500,000
just wanted to
per
clarify that.
project.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So that's a considerable amount.
yeah, and I think it's a good size for our town. You know, I mean, I think it would get the job done that needs to be done. And yeah, I agree with Susan 100% that John Sheldon will never have the resources to do it.
Now, when Brian and I were emailing about this, Brian S. and I were emailing about this morning, or this afternoon, he had also said Peacedale was a possible place. And so if we think about who owns that building that's,
Taste right?
yeah, is it Taste Right?
Yeah, that's the multi-story, like 3-story building,
Yeah.
right? Yeah,
Oh.
that's
Lassard,
West
right?
Lassard, West
West
Lassard,
Lassard.
you know, so,
And across the street where that salon is.
Yeah,
yeah, that one I don't think, does it have a second story? Some of the buildings there might have a second story.
Now,
I
what
would think
about-
that the intent of the program is to keep retail or commercial on the first floor and residential affordable housing above, I would think.
What about across from Sweener's where Cherry Hill used to be, and that's all knocked down? That building that's there that had antique or second,
Belmont Market, doesn't Belmont Market?
behind Belmont.
yeah,
Belmont.
it had, secondhand clothing and
Yep.
children's stuff. That building is so dilapidated. I mean, what could be done with that?
Right now, they want to put a marijuana dispensary in it.
Oh,
Everybody does.
Yeah, there's a
That could
bunch of
do
those
well.
proposals.
What
That
about
could
Feet
do
First?
well.
Feet First is still empty, right?
Feet First, yes.
No, but that's zoned commercial highway.
Yeah, and that's probably not very conducive to renovation. It's a renovation, right? You're not going to build on, you're going to renovate.
Yeah, it
Renovate.
looks-
So that would have to be a major upgrade in terms of putting stories on and everything. So I don't think Feet First would be a potential.
well, I wonder if a second story, I mean, we don't, a second story, if a second story were possible, then the whole thing on Robinson Street would be good where Healy's is, because that desperately needs a second story.
Yeah, I believe has already been approved by the planning department, right?
Has not been approved, has not been approved yet. It's slowly working its way through the process.
What's the it in this sentence?
Housing above the
Okay,
block, the
I
whole
think it's
building.
what, 8 or 10.
Correct. I think it's 10
residential.
units. Yeah,
there'd be rental units, right? I seem to remember this now.
yeah,
Yeah.
Adding
Rental
just
units
one
is
story.
good.
yes. To the best of my knowledge, it's really been moving through the process kind of slowly because the applicants are trying to do a lot of the work on their own, which is resulting in us returning materials to them for improvements. So it's taking a little bit of time.
And
Well,
that's,
it'd be nice
that's
if-
Ellen Sweena.
That's actually zoned to do what they want to do, right? There's no zoning problem there.
No,
Not that I'm aware of, no.
no, there isn't. Because you remember before that bank came in, there was that beautiful drawing of a,
Yeah,
first story commercial and second stories apartments and whatever. Who owned that,
that
Larry?
was a 3-story building, Susan.
Yeah, and was it the guy who owns the
Woodworking.
Muse?
He was one of them. He was one of the guys.
Yeah,
The I want to say cabinet maker, but woodworker. It was one of them. He was going to move in there, and they ran out of time and money.
they said they
to
couldn't
get-
make it work financially, which
Right.
I thought was just terrible because it was such a perfect design.
Yep.
That somehow we should have made that happen. But anyway, that's how I know it's zoned for 3-story and residential. I remember.
But it's too bad they're only going to do 2 stories.
Well,
But,
that Healy, the
their
Healy
property.
building,
The Healy building can only handle.
it can only take one unless you
One
put some legs around it to hold something up.
Yeah.
Can't,
Jay, the old design that Susan was talking about was going to take the whole area of Bank RI, right along Main Street, go around the corner, was going to take out Northup's and Healy's, and Northup's and Healy's was going to be raised, and
Wow.
in a whole new 3-story building, retail on the first floor, offices on the second floor, residential on the third floor, and they couldn't make it work. And it was very, very difficult to work with the town to get the things that they needed as well. At
that
the
was
time.
probably
That was-
about the time, 2008, 2009.
no, it was before that.
Was it?
I mean, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So I don't think we need to dwell on that. We'll be here
Yeah.
forever. And
It's too bad
start getting
the
Aja.
Chevy place, that whole area being right next to the river couldn't be developed more for housing, right? That, they've got the parts place and, too bad that couldn't be such a wonderful location,
Well, Paul Massey, Larry will correct me if I'm wrong, but Paul Massey has offered to move,
Right. There's no place in town for him to move.
but he says there's no place for him to go.
Right.
I mean, I think maybe we ought to get creative and think about places he could go.
Yeah,
We ought to
because
look at some town
that's what you want.
property and swap. We ought to swap town property for his facility.
I mean, that,
What town property?
I thought it would be a beautiful venue for a nice restaurant and a town-owned amphitheater or something for groups to play and all that kind of stuff. And raise the old, where they do all the repairs on the vehicles. Because that building is in tough shape. Well,
If we
they
bring-
put a lot into it.
If we bring some life to the Saugatucket area with a amphitheater and a nice walkway, how great would it be to walk out of your apartment and you can walk around the town, you can walk around the river,
I agree.
What's the legality of the town swapping land with a private party? It's totally legal, I would guess. All we would have to do would be to identify a suitable space for him. Somebody could work with him on that and see if he saw any place in town that might suit his requirements and see what we could do. That's a very valuable piece of property for the town. And for him, it's kind of, really cramping his style.
It's very,
Exactly.
very limiting, very
Yeah.
limiting.
I mean, he can't park his delivery trucks on the bridge because every time he
Right.
does, Susan goes by and calls the police. And he, Right, Larry?
It's the truth. It's the truth. Now, the bridge can't handle the weight.
The bridge can't handle the weight. And it's a state road and he's not allowed to do that. And I let him know every time. But he can't park his car. He needs to be
Yeah, it's
out.
not a good location.
Right.
The greater footprint.
That this again is historical, but I tried to make when the Commons was being developed, way in the back of the property, I wanted to make it car dealer central, and I wanted to move Speedcraft, Fred Smith Dodge, Paul Massey, all the car dealers off of Old Tower Hill Road and Main Street, even South County Motors at the time, the Saab dealer, and put them way in the back where it's a destination to go look for a car, and they'd have all the room they needed. And I got killed in the charrettes. And in fact, car dealers were prohibited from building or being in the Commons. That's how well I did.
The other thing about car dealerships is I think pretty soon the whole concept of a car dealership is going to be disrupted.
Yep.
So-
Carvana and those kind of things.
Yeah.
Larry, can I make a point?
Yep.
Yesterday, I was in the Peaceville Mill Complex.
Yep.
And the space in it, it's cavernous, the amount of space, cavernous. Whalers Brewery is there, Navtec's there. But if you look at the multi-floored part of this, like sort of like the front of it, it's on the east side of it. It's cavernous. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
It's where the offices were, and then there were floors above it.
Yep.
There's nothing there. Absolutely nothing.
Actually, Henry, that is probably the best place, except that that nobody would want, me included, to have all of that be called, I mean, that should be rental property, but not all of it deed restricted. The deed restriction affordable is really a problem because it means, I mean, it's just another way of keeping poor people poor, because you put them in those deed restricted things and they can't enjoy the appreciation of the value of their property in 10 years, and they can't sell it because it's deed restricted.
Unless they're rentals.
Unless they're rentals. But then we have to know whether Brian S's
but this
Grant.
is one of the classics New England thing that Jay has been talking about, because a big chunk of the space in that mill has been vacant since 1948. I mean, it's just years upon years upon years and nothing happening. So Thunberg bought it off of Gariello,
Right.
and I think he just stores boats in there or something. But the amount of space in there, this absolutely cavernous space, is appalling. It's not being used for anything. And a lot of these guys that own these milk complexes don't want to budge when it comes for their rentals. And they were just as soon as sit back and watch it, But Jay, what you were saying is, I know that the amount of tours that you made through New England and looking at these empty factories and everything. 2 weeks ago, I was in Southbridge in Massachusetts. Old factories, just totally empty, nothing there. And I'm sure something could be done to save this,
I guess the cost of converting them to condos is just too great.
Yeah, so what do we do with them? Just let them sit and rot?
What condition is that Peacedale one in? Is it?
Oh, it's in pretty, I thought it was in pretty good shape, because it has beams in it that are the ceiling, that has cement floors. This factory was built, especially in the flooring, to hold very, very heavy textile equipment.
Right.
And so it's built. Like, one of the things I was looking for, because when I was looking at old buildings in Providence, is looking for oil-soaked wood floors. Well, there's really none of that, because all the floors have been poured cement, and then flattened, and finished.
Huh.
And it's designed to hold a lot of weight. So possibly you could do something. I don't know.
All the windows are new, Tom. Well, new in the last 20 years. The Goriello family used grants, renovation grants from the federal government, and removed all the old windows in the entire complex and renovated that. So the shell is really good.
I'm curious, what's the floor to ceiling height? Because that's also sometimes a showstopper for converting it to condos.
I think that's 10-foot ceilings because it was meant for manufacturing, right, Henry?
Right.
Yeah. Well, what happened was in the photographs that I've seen it with when my parents worked there, my grandparents, a lot of the machinery that ran in there had overhead pulleys on it.
Yeah.
That when you wanted to engage a knitting machine or a spinning machine, the operator then just pulled over on that pulley and engaged it. Right. But the pulleys had to be fairly high up because if a worker got tangled into one of those, it was going to flip them right through the air.
Yeah.
So I have a suggestion. So see what you think of this. Thunberg, if that's how you pronounce his name, something close to
Thunberg.
He was very excited, and he came to see us years ago when, you remember, Larry, when he wanted to do something in there and he couldn't get the use permit for something or other. No, that was the
motorcycle pot.
That was
the throttle moved out.
Okay, but why don't we ask Thunberg? Why doesn't somebody, a couple of us, go and talk to him and see what he's interested in doing with that building? Would that be?
I think we should investigate all those ones we've talked about. I think it would be good to have somebody go around and talk to the 3 or 4 individuals involved and find out if there's any interest. And if there is, see what we can do. I don't think we should rule anybody out. I think we got to be fair about it. And,
In terms of process, though, I guess, if I owned a business, not that wouldn't want an economic development person to come in, but I just wonder, as the new planning director, Jamie, that do you, there's all these different owners of different buildings. Do you go in at any point and talk to them and just find out what their needs are and wants and wishes, and help as a planning director of what could be, and help to work with anything? Is that something that is doable?
Is Jamie still with us?
Yep. Yeah. I'm sorry, I was muted. It's potentially something we can undertake. I think the department historically has worked with the town manager's office on economic development with the assistance of the commission. It really is important that it's commission kind of sponsored and requested versus just someone, chasing something. That if you have a good idea, we can potentially run it up the flagpole and try it. But, long term, absolutely that. Role and goal of a department is to make sure that the town has a healthy internal economy, in addition to looking for growth from external entities. And part of that is making sure what you have is being utilized potentially to its fullest extent. A lot of times you'll see there's entry to the market that makes it difficult for these mill conversions. Capiarnato is doing a project just in north of Providence in the old Providence picture frame building.
Yeah, I know that building well.
Basically purchased that kind of, we'll call it a small city block. And he's doing commercial redo up front and kind of the small junior anchor tenants. And then he's redoing that mill. Again, I'm not 100% sure on the subsidies associated with that, but I'm sure there was financial help either by the city, state, and federal government in a HUD program. Because to gut that building and then re-insulate it and redo the roof, redo all the windows, you got to buy right, and then the rents have to support the financial investment. And sometimes when you're outside of that urban core, the rents don't support it. So you have to look for those subsidies. So I think you're kind of on some of the right paths of looking for the funding and looking at that. It's called the Hope 6 grant monies. There's only $1 million for the whole state. $1 million for the whole country. And they're looking to award 2 grants of $500,000 apiece. You know, so you're not just competing against Rhode Island, you're competing against the country for 2 grant recipients. So again, a lot of times you can be successful working with the state. So, you know, part of our role as a department is to help you fine tune some of your requests, fine tune and articulate your focus so that it can be targeted. Now, if it's mill rehab, let's target mill rehab. If it's downtown revitalization, let's target downtown revitalization. If you spread us too thin, it may be difficult to have the success you're looking for.
Go ahead, Jay.
So I think what you're saying is that if we want to progress with this, that we should do it as the committee. My thought would be that we should develop a PowerPoint or at least a bullet slide with all the information on this particular grant. And, you know, if it's 2 grants of 500,000 each, who's to say we couldn't get it? I mean, if we have a compelling project, and it sounds like the Peacedale Mill could be a compelling project. It's been empty for so long, and it sounds like it's a sound building. We should develop a little dog and pony show and invite the 3 or 4 principals to watch a Zoom presentation with us, because we can't go, we don't want to go see them, I think, and ask them if there's any interest. And if there is, you know, make a decision on which one we're going to go with.
I don't want to throw too much water on the mill aspect, but that's industrial land. It's zoned industrial. Residential is not allowed.
Oh,
So it's changing the comp plan.
no wonder it's been empty all these years.
It's changing zoning. We've talked, I'll say the town has talked about making it residential. And at that point in time, 25 years ago, when I was still on this committee voted to oppose that because we're trying to keep any commercial industrial zone land and buildings, industrial and commercial. Boy, have things changed. But it's not, it will take 2 years minimal to get it zoned or get it run through the process. And I don't need to tell everybody all the processes, and the public hearings on the comp plan, and then through the planning board and all that kind of stuff. They've also looked at making those lofts for artists and that kind of stuff, where there's not as much infrastructure needed for that. But that wouldn't go along with what the intent of the HUD program is. I think that we can throw, I don't think it needs to be formal. I think it should be low key. Go up to Bob Massey and ask him what the family's appetite would be, where they would like to go, and see if we could be a facilitator of doing that. It doesn't hurt anything. And as long as it's not in the newspaper and not publicly known, I think that's fine. And I think the best bet is to, we could go to Silversmith or John Sheldon. And I think those 2 properties are what the intent is all about. You're on Main Street, they both need renovations. And I think they might be the low hanging fruit in this situation.
Is any part of Massey's facility there protected? Historically protected?
No,
Okay,
No.
all right.
there's no true historical district with restrictions in Wakefield.
No, but so Larry, to go back to what you were talking about, I think, and I personally, I think you're the one who ought to go. You're the one who ought to go talk.
Yeah, I have no problem. I need to call Bob Massey about business anyway. So that's a piece of cake. That's just throw it against the wall and see what their appetite is. And he'll take it low key and I can do that real easy.
Can you
John
talk to
Sheldon, I know, but if you feel as though you know John,
Well,
I
okay.
can.
Well, here's the thing. I do feel as though I have a small familiarity with Sheldon. I think he would find it much more reassuring to deal with you than to talk to me about it.
I mean, I don't have a problem with it. I know
I
him.
mean, I've talked to him
respects me. I
about
got a good
taking his
relationship
shingling
with him.
off and all that kind of stuff, but I think it would be better if you did it.
I can make it casual where I'm going into the cobbler, pick up some stuff. I'll be carrying some shoes with me and say, hey, John, and it'll be
That
out in
would
the
be good.
chair maybe tomorrow or whatever. Because
By the way, yeah,
I can play that part.
But
Okay,
Mr. Chairman, to Jay's point, if you can be targeted and focused and use your network, and what you may find using your local network is that there's someone who is contemplating a project and they would do it if they only had another couple $100,000. And then you have the aha moment that I may be able to help you with that financial gap.
Correct.
And you potentially have a win-win.
And I think in the Sheldon property, I didn't know that Scott Hallberg and Bell had an option on it, or first right of refusal. I'm real good friends with those guys, and they'll tell me absolutely not. Or it might be a good step if it's applied through by the town and everything else. They're not real thrilled with the town because they've been jumping, in their opinion, they've been jumping through all kinds of hoops, and the town is not as business friendly as it seemed to be 2 years ago with the change of administrations and that kind of stuff. So I think that might be well received because let's face it, you're not going to have offices in retail above Sheldon's furniture or that kind of stuff. It's in terrible shape with asbestos. So, I mean, this would be a godsend to them.
well,
Right.
I think.
I've talked to John about the asbestos on the asbestos shingles on the outside. I don't know what asbestos is going on the inside. But I do know that if he wanted to take that asbestos, if he were willing to join up with somebody, we could get that asbestos off his building. I mean, that would be something that there would be historical, that, Preserve Rhode Island or somebody would help with some funding for that. But he doesn't want to talk to me about business kinds of things. For me, for him, I'm just a little beep.
did you return a patio set and that's why?
No.
Cushions. It's probably cushions.
No, I take him my little projects. I've never been a problem,
Yeah.
but he just doesn't view me as a serious,
So Larry, you'll do both and
Yeah, I can take on that. That's not a big deal.
and who is Silversmith?
Older than me, an investor kind of guy. I think he's a customer, but I don't really know him well. But I think the way to get to him is through George at the Muse.
Oh,
All right. And
Okay.
I can ask George about what he thinks
okay,
through his connections with the Easter Seals.
okay.
All right. So that's a phone call. I don't have a problem with it.
Okay, good.
So I'm getting the impression that a lot of these people you're talking about have properties, they're abandoned or they're partially, utilized. How do they survive? They're paying taxes every year. Why don't they just, what are they in it for? I just don't get it.
They own nothing on the properties. And they don't need a lot to survive.
When you say they don't own anything on the properties, they're rentals or leases?
No. They
No.
own the buildings outright.
Right.
They've inherited them or whatever.
So what source of income do they have? If it's
Sheldon's got some
Usually
businesses
trust
in-
funds,
John Sheldon's house is on the water, on Salt Pond. It's.
But they don't have any end game in terms of
No.
going to hold it.
Sheldon runs his little business. I don't know how much money he
Yeah.
makes, but he,
Right. Sheldon's Furniture.
he sells furniture.
Probably
He
not
used to
making
make
a whole lot.
mattresses. I don't think he makes mattresses anymore, but he used to make mattresses and he has summer clientele, people who come and put down a huge amount of money for those telescope chairs he sells.
Yeah.
And he has tenants too, right? Doesn't he have business tenants?
I know.
I don't think so. I
That
think the
building is-
business tenants are in the Dove and Distaff
Yeah.
building and
What about Mary Murphy?
that's Bell.
Oh,
That's
okay.
the Bell block.
Sheldon just owns that one asbestos shingled building.
And Scott Hallberg owns the little building between Massey
Yeah.
and Dove and Distaff, right in there with the pink pineapple and that kind of thing. So that's why they want that first option on that. Bell's family owns one
Yeah.
half of the building, and they own a little portion. They'd like to have the rest of the half, and then they control that whole area. And obviously they would renovate it and make it a gem.
Well, I don't know. They'd renovate it. I don't know whether they'd make it a gym, but,
Well, the
but
father would make them to.
there's one building in there that's owned by, somebody else. But I'm having a senior moment. I can't remember his name. I think his name might be Brian, but I'm afraid to say Brian because
That'll be the third.
too many people will raise their hand. I'll try to think of his name.
All right, let's go on to the next topic. Otherwise, we'll be here all night.
Well, can I, not to belabor it too much, one of the things that Susan and Brian talked about a couple weeks ago is before we look at other grants for the Saugatucket, if we could have maybe Jamie, the new planning director, and Brian down at the Saugatucket and just look at possibly what we're talking about from the URI project where they looked at doing some landscape design and ideas. And so if we could just all be on the same page and get your, knowledge of that whole idea of an amphitheater, and then we can start looking for, because we just felt like we needed to have yours and town council's blessing before we start moving ahead.
Joanne, thank you for bringing up the next topic on the agenda.
Oh, I thought that was part of it. Sorry.
Thank you very much. That's where I was going.
Sorry. I didn't get to read the agenda beforehand.
Perfect. I think that's well worth it. Brian and Jamie, have either one of you had any information given to you about our Saugatucket River project that we undertook over a course of 2 years?
I had an opportunity, I flipped through the document, understanding it's done by URI students. Yeah, I'm a former URI grad student in the planning program. So a lot of times you look at those studies, you look at the experience of the people who prepared them, and then you have to look at the fiscal reality to the plans that were drawn without any fiscal constraints.
Right,
No,
absolutely.
but we're well aware of that. We just want to build on the ideas particularly the one thing the Economic Development Committee has really resonated with was the idea of building an amphitheater that would be part of the bend of the Saugatucket River by the
Elementary school.
Whitefield Elementary School. And so we just want, the main thing we're interested in from the URI student project is just to see what drawings they have of what they envisioned. And they did some analysis of where the stormwater flows into the river down there. And that could be useful for us because part of what we would say about this project is that it's to absorb some flood. It's part of a water storm management project. So there is what we're talking about is not saying we're going to do any specific one of those projects, but we're going to try and pick out the things that the research they did, the drawings they did that are useful to what we think we could try to begin to cultivate. So we know perfectly well, and we never hire these students. We never engage this to be a shovel-ready kind of project.
Right.
We do this to engage the community in thinking about what could happen here that hasn't happened, and then to see whether from that there are any little segments of that we could build on. And that's what we want to do with this one too.
Right. And we had stakeholders, property owners, abutters involved, and they were involved in the design process with these students. So and we thought that they came up with the idea of underneath the amphitheater, because of the lay of the land, it's where the basketball court is right now on High Street. That vicinity, that we can pre-treat the water in a state-of-the-art treatment process that goes into the Saugatucket. And when High Street was renovated and the sewer line expanded and everything else, they didn't anticipate that. It was another $250,000, $500,000 to do that. And it would have delayed the project but 2 years. And the regime did not want to wait the time because the state had already allocated and approved this project. Let's go. And so all that water that comes down the hill onto High Street now is flowing really good, and it doesn't flood and that kind of stuff, but it's still going. And they have the special catch basins that really doesn't do the job, but it puts a Band-Aid on an open wound. And this aspect with the amphitheater would bring clean water funds and water runoff funds from one whole side of the Saugatucket, because the lay of the land, it all comes right down across from my property and then goes right into the river. They'll say it's pre-treated because of the manholes. I'll tell you they're full of crap.
Yeah. So
Just point of clarification. First of all, the amphitheater is a separate thing. It's designed for flood control, the way it was done. And it's totally separate from the water treatment. Both of them are important and viable, but they are two different things. Secondly, a couple of times we've gone through as a committee and established our priorities, and we should make Jamie and Brian aware of our priorities for doing the work at Saugatucket. I think we came up with a top 5, if I remember.
We
or
do.
am I hallucinating?
No,
5 or 10.
They were ranked choice, like in Maine, ranked choice.
Yeah, Jay, you make a good point, and Susan does too. And I didn't fully explain myself on the URI project that it's good to have the students. Again, I was one, and you get the ability when a student isn't financially constrained, or an architect or a landscape architect, they get to think outside the box where we wouldn't normally think. So pulling those items that you like or potentially you feel are attributable to the downtown area and can move forward in an analysis. And you alluded to the fact that there's a document or a list somewhere that articulates that study in the form of priorities would help our department target and focus more on the aspects associated with that study and how it interrelates with an effort in the entire downtown. And is there synergy between, you know, anything done in the downtown or using HUD funds and then potentially using clean water funds, and your small project starts to become a little bit bigger and more attributable to multiple entities.
Correct.
We actually had a joint meeting, Jamie, with the town council,
Okay.
and to help prioritize the list. And so I think it was 3 years ago.
We'll look for that list, Joanne,
Yeah.
Please.
or if anybody has access or remembers where it is, or in an email or somewhere. You know,
I know we did it.
I know
My
you do
my
it.
money's on Susan
Yeah.
being organized and having all that.
I will look for it.
Okay. And even if you can point us in the right direction, again, you know, Brian had mentioned that this was a subject of discussion amongst you as a commission. And, you know, I did have an opportunity to peruse through that. I haven't studied it or memorized it, or I'm
But
not
you
fully.
don't, no, we're not inviting you to do that because it's, these projects are always very complicated and they do have a lot of cutting edge technology in them and stuff that we know is beyond our ken. So let us give you our priority list because it had a lot more reality in it.
But we should point out that all the constituents that met with these college students and Professor Green, Will Green,
Loved it.
for his, you know, leadership, everybody gave input on what they'd like to see. How would they like to see the Saugatuck River, you know, just be developed into something more lively, more economically, you know, feasible and sustainability and, you know, cleaning up the river and yet bringing opportunity for more events down there, and just making it more usable and aesthetically more pleasing too. So, you know, we got a lot of input from different groups. So it's not like it was just us and these students only. There were a lot of people at these meetings. So there are
Stakeholders.
a lot of input into that.
And Jamie, you should know that the project had two. Main Street was sort of the upper boundary and the river was the lower boundary. So the idea was how to take Main Street and turn it around in a way so that it acknowledged the river, so that you could have some flow, if you pardon the expression, between Main Street and the economic stuff that goes on and the Saugatuck River and the whatever
The bike path.
and you know, so all that. So it was not just about the river, it was about using the river as a way of energizing the development of Main Street.
Right.
Good point.
And the town owns the parking lot behind the Bell Block that floods out all the time. And guess where all the water goes in town? Down Old Tower Hill Road, goes right down Main Street and dumps into the Saugatuck down there and is not pre-treated. And so there'd be all kinds of money to do an underground pre-treatment from that side of the river.
Well,
And
one of the
Go ahead.
students, I was just looking because Brian W. Did put out for us to look at the whole set of drawings that the students did.
Yep.
And there are in there, they have already identified where all the points are, all the storm sewers come into the river. I mean, that's why we don't want to leave this stuff in Will Green's storage cabinet, because there's a lot of information there that we will need to justify what we're doing and
Provide the funding.
Well, and to dictate what it is that we should be doing. So we want to build on all of that.
And DOT, from what I understand, is really under pressure to
Yes,
clean up the water.
yes.
And they need to spend federal dollars, otherwise they're gonna be brought to court and that kind of thing. So by integrating this, we might be able to really make this a great project, but we have no dollars to associate with. And we need to gel the concept and agree in our committee and then find funding sources for the design of it and go from there. I think everybody's on board. I think the town council, I think the planning board. Maria Mack loves it. She was part of the whole thing. So this town would support it unbelievably because of the river and the nature walks and that kind of stuff that were envisioned by the kids. So that's why it was still on our agenda.
So just let me say to my little, my cohorts in crime here, Joanne and Brian S. Brian W. did put the whole project on in a place where we can find it, and it's apparently linked to the documents that he sent around tonight, or that he sent around for tonight's meeting.
Yeah.
So I invite you both to go look at that. I can't get them big enough to read some of them, but after this meeting, when we have our next little phone call, we can talk about that some more.
Good.
Okay.
All right. I gotta go to the agenda. I've got that on my cell phone here. Meeting schedule. Brian W., you sent that out. It's basically the first Thursday of every month.
Just didn't change what you're doing.
Right.
But if any of the members are interested in changing something, now's the time to do it. If the time isn't working for you, if the day isn't working for you, if it is, we just leave it the way it is and continue on.
You just have the Friday in December, I think it is, or November. I sent you an email on that. The date is off by one day. So
Yeah,
it shows Friday, but you meant Thursday. That's all.
yeah.
We will pick you apart, Brian.
Somebody looks at it and
For you,
thinks, oh, they
Tom,
moved it to
I-
Friday.
You haven't
think-
had a punctuation change from Susan yet.
This is a date change.
Yeah.
Just remember, we're planners, not English majors.
What's the date
Oh.
in January?
I think the
Yeah,
second.
we always have trouble. That date, we leave it on the calendar, Brian W., but then we always change it.
Yeah, so what date is it?
The 7th of January.
Right.
That's not too bad.
Oh, that's not bad.
What I would like to see is, I don't think everybody's looked at that email and checked those dates.
I haven't
Why
checked.
don't we leave it on the agenda for next month? Everybody check their schedules at their offices and that kind of stuff. Susan, when you're going to Germany or
No,
whatever.
no, I can't go anywhere. I'm here forever.
Yeah. But
You go to Connecticut now.
I'll make sure it doesn't interfere with an anniversary or something like that. And we'll vote on it to accept it in December, since that's when we have to do it anyway. All right?
That's fine. Not a problem.
Okay.
Brian, I have a question for you. Brian W. Did you get my email
When?
today?
That sounds like a
I'm not
no.
sure that I did. I got one just now. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, I sent it much earlier in the day.
I
Verizon.
actually, it's the most recent email on my list now that I'm looking at it. So there's a picture of the Northampton mixed use. Is that the one you're talking about?
Yeah, I was asking if you could at some point in the meeting as old business, because we talked about this last month and I was going to give that information to the committee. And that is the information. I wanted to talk about it just briefly as old business. But is there any way you could display that for us?
Um,
I think that's a
It-
big ask, Jay.
no, it's just gonna take me a little bit. Hold
Share
on
the
a
screen.
second.
All right, then while he's doing that, Jamie, you wanna, or Brian W., either one of you, any updates on COVID and commercial? Any problems, or? That's the next thing on the agenda. We talk about them every month. Any updates, any problems that we as EDC could help solve?
And just from a COVID perspective, I think you're seeing it in Massachusetts and a little bit in Connecticut about dining and indoor space, where Massachusetts is, rolling back to a phase 2 point something, where they're restricting capacity. Connecticut is doing something similar. So I think as you get into the winter months, if you still see an uptick, I think Massachusetts had upwards of 1,700 new cases in a day, 25 deaths and 250 plus or minus hospitalizations. Those are some of the biggest numbers they've seen since day one. So again, you're going to continue to hear the flatten the curve. So again, I think they're going to be conservative as the months go on.
Gina announced hers today.
Yeah, Gina announced seven new things. What were they, Larry? I didn't hear.
Huh?
There's restaurant restrictions again.
Yep, they all have to close
Curfew.
by 10:30 on Saturday night, but 10 every night of the week.
They can do
They can
takeout
only-
after
they can
that.
do Takeout after that.
And like in Massachusetts, you can see some big impact. The casino that was built in Everett, the hotel is closing until sometime in December. That casino has to close at 9:30. They are shutting down, so they're basically open from 9 to 9. Everybody has to be out of the building at 9:30, and the restaurants are shutting down at 9. Massachusetts pretty much is shutting everything down by 9 p.m. in the evening. Massachusetts, for golfers, if you are a golfer and you golf in Massachusetts, you have to wear a face mask while you're golfing, even if you're
You have to do that now in Rhode Island, starting, I think, everybody's going to get an alert on their phone at
Yes.
noontime on
Tomorrow.
Sunday.
Oh, Sunday. Okay.
From Gina, reminding you of the new restrictions and outside masks, at restaurants, masks until you're taking a bite. It's really come down. They've cut down on the square footage. Big box stores, back to one person per 150 square feet of floor space. So we're back to how we began.
I
And
can tell you,
All
I can tell you
athletic.
it's curtailed at URI to some degree. I'm helping out with the testing daily. And last week there were 32 cases. So I know Rhode Island's way up, but URI itself, 16,000 plus students here and stuff. We had 32 cases only. So that was really good news. So they're really wearing masks outside, if you're walking around the quad or anywhere, everybody's wearing masks outside. It's crazy. It's great. I mean, it's amazing because I thought, when you get into a building, put your mask on, but the students are all wearing them out and about outside.
that's the law as of noon on Sunday.
Yeah.
I can tell you, Larry, my wife works at Brookdale, a nursing home. No more visitations. That's done. And the workers now have to wear shields and a mask and gloves. And it's just, and testing every week.
The cinemas up at the Commons have closed until next year.
Yeah.
That's a COVID thing.
So getting back to Jay, I'm running the meeting off of my Mac at home, and I emailed your stuff to my home address, but when I tried to bring the image up, my Mac won't allow me to share without changing my security preferences, and I can't change my security preferences without shutting the Zoom meeting down. So I'll get that fixed tonight, but I won't be able to share the image tonight.
I'll make an executive decision, and that presentation, when you get a chance, Brian and W, in the next few days, send it out to the committee.
I will
review it, and please put a note on your for next month's agenda that it's on the new business, and that's what we'll do. I don't want to talk about it today without having seen it. It's just a waste of time.
Why don't we just do it next meeting? Why don't we just do it all next meeting?
That's what he's saying.
No, yeah, but I want
Don't
everybody
send it
to
out.
have it. I want everybody to have it, to review it before the meeting, so it's not
That's
new to
helpful.
them at the meeting.
Yeah.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Hey,
All
what's the status on the change in zoning for the Old Tower Hill Road, the commercial district there?
Behind Prout, you're talking, right?
Or
No.
No,
Remember, we did the study 2.5 years ago, and out of that came the recommendation to allow mixed use.
Yeah, he's talking about Old Tower Hill Road,
Yeah,
changing commercial highway zoning
Correct.
to allow.
it was supposed to take a year, and that's about a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago. So
But
what's
they
going
never,
on?
well, Tom, it took a year from when they started it and they never started it.
Welcome to South Kingston, Jamie.
Well,
We just buried you in another one.
I was gonna say, I've been here 6 months and I haven't heard about a zone change.
Go in. We did a whole study over a year or two. Included all the landlords and abutters on Old Tower Hill Road and Kingstown Road at the Dale Collier intersection. We brought them in. We had a big presentation on mixed use and higher densities. Came up with a plan and involved the planning board, sent it off to the planning board. And they said, yeah, we're in the middle of the comprehensive plan rewrite right now. When we're done with that, we'll get around. This is a top priority. And it's basically sitting there right now. So
I know Rob had said that.
It's not just sitting there. Wait a minute. It's not just sitting there. We paid $100,000 to Huxley or whatever they call themselves to do a study to get this doggone thing done, and nothing is happening. And we've been working on this since 2016. It's not just 2018, it's 2016. And it's the most important thing we can do in this town because it adds economic development for business, new business space, and it adds mixed use housing above 2, 3, 4 stories.
All right, so this is
to go forward, and the planning board has been, I'm going to say this, and you can quote me, an impediment.
Okay, so this is going to be the part of the next, or one of the next phases of the Horsley Witten project, and we just completed the
That was
cottage
supposed to be done in
zoning.
a year.
And Rob had told us end of this year we'd see the change.
Well,
No, I don't remember that.
we're still wrapping up.
At the beginning of the
last-
year, I asked Rob for a timeline, and he said by the end of this year.
We're not going to see it by the end of this year.
I figured
I
that.
told them to get off their behinds and get the thing done. I mean, it's just ridiculous. It was supposed to be, who was our old planning chief? What was her name?
Chelsea.
Chelsea,
Yeah,
yeah. It was going to be a year from then.
Oh, okay.
That's been more
Kayla.
than a year. That's been 18 months.
No, Chelsea is the one who first told us.
Right.
Chelsea is the one who told us it couldn't be done soon.
Okay, all right.
Changing,
So I told you, Jamie, that I let everybody talk, and we shoot real bullets in this committee.
Nobody should have mentioned mixed use, I tell you.
Yeah, that gets
It's your own fault if you mentioned it.
blood boiling.
Jay
Take the blame.
spearheaded that project. Again, something for you to review.
Yeah.
And talk to Brian about. It has some really, it was well received by the planning board. It was just a timing issue, and is sitting on the shelf, ready for them to act on. We
Right.
did all the legwork, had all the stakeholders. It's not the town telling the stakeholders, we want to rezone, or we want to do this, or we want to do that. The stakeholders were in there, and they told us what they would like, and we incorporated that in. So
Yeah,
it's,
and I don't think there's any intention not to do that. My understanding during the brief time I've been here was that the intention was to essentially get the low-hanging fruit first.
Yep.
And work on the cottages, the inclusionary and the accessory dwelling units, because it was comparatively quick and easy and an easy sell. I do believe the next phase that we'll move into, I think, includes the commercial highway district. I'd have to go and look.
Yeah, no.
Well, there's been,
No,
we've never heard, we haven't come to agreement. Those other issues are much easier. Cottage and all that stuff is much easier, because the problem here is the question of how much density, whether we're going to do form-based zoning or specify, other kinds of parameters for the density. And there's never been any decision about that. So we couldn't even start the rezoning process until we begin to think about how it's going to be rezoned.
but
And the
remember,
planning
Susan,
department-
we're not the planning board.
No. And I was just about to
No.
say, the planning board and the planning department they've not come to any decision about what that would be. I wasn't saying us, Larry.
Yeah, okay.
This
So-
is this is a great example of government failing.
Okay, Jay.
The stakeholders all want to do things on their property. They've all said, if we could do it, we would do it. And, if the town is going to legislate what it looks like for them to put a multi-story building on their property after a zoning change that basically says, this is the setback in the front, this is the setback on the side, front and rear, and you have to meet all the specifications for housing of people on the second, third, and fourth floor. And, government doesn't need to legislate what it looks like. And it doesn't try to make another South County Commons on Tower Hill Road. So, yeah, I'm done with that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Jay.
Thank you.
Right, can I just finish a couple points there? So Jamie, you started the meeting by saying you would love to hear from residents about how they feel, what works, what doesn't. And so the survey we just talked about, we did go out and we talked to dozens of the commercial property owners. And so I recommend that you go and take a look at that PowerPoint, because that'll give you a good finger on the pulse of how those business people felt. And if I had to summarize one thing they asked for, it was for the mixed use. And that caused us to have plenty of discussions about how we changed the zoning. And frankly, it's, again, without rehashing it, it's been about 2 years. And I was under the impression that something was happening in the background. It sounds like this whole year's been blown away with no progress at all. So that is a problem. It's not only a problem from what we in this little group expect, but more important to what those property owners heard us say at a public meeting about it, about a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
So I think it's an important issue. It's not just a couple of sore spots that we might have. It represents a pretty nice slice of all of the owners on Old Tower Hill Road.
Right, and meanwhile, some of them have gone ahead with development that is not conducive to what we would have liked to have seen in the way of mixed use. And that is going to continue if the planning board doesn't get its act together and Horsley doesn't get their act together. Time passes, people decide, I'm not going to wait, so I'm going to put my Pawtucket Bank building here. That could have been a bank on one floor and it could have been housing on the upper floors.
Yeah.
Other thing, the filling station there, the new filling station, great.
Okay.
Time passes,
All right.
opportunities pass.
The
So-
Pawtucket
can I
Credit
just go
Union,
back? So
All right, wait.
what is the timeline for getting the zoning done? I mean,
Yeah.
let's talk in 6-month increments to make it reasonable. Is
Why do
it
we target
6
it? Why
months?
do
Is
we
it
put
a
it?
year? Is it 18 months? What is?
What we have right now is we're halfway through a study with our consultant. We have a work session with the planning board on Tuesday to look at program and look at, kind of prioritization as we complete the comp plan from we'll say a design guideline standpoint, a code form point, whether it's I have experience with form-based code. So whether it's form-based code centric or a hybrid between a traditional Euclidean and form-based with some design guidelines, but trying to move that along, and also with the commission and others' input, articulate what the build out vision is. We have the URI study for Lower Tower Hill Road, and there are some components in there. If you kind of pull, there's 4 different options there. And if you probably made a 5th and you pull the best components of the 4, you have something that you can potentially look at scale and density and building forms and architecture. And then if there's buy-in on that, you work backwards on the code. To Jay's point, you want to develop a code that gives the developer some certainty that he starts at point A, and as long as he achieves what's required in the code, he gets his permit when he's at point D. We have a 4-step process in town, but at the 4th step or point D, you shouldn't be telling him he can't do that, or he has to do more if he's met the requirement. So a lot of it is being really careful and make sure that the reg's written, and it's written to a point where you don't have unintended consequences, where someone says, well, I got your form-based code, so I can do a large storage building because I realized that your use way back in the 30th section says you can do warehousing.
Right, I get that, but maybe we can plagiarize somebody else's so we don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah,
Listen,
that's what
this is not
consultants
rocket
are.
science. This is not rocket science. It's been done all over the country. It's not rocket science. We shouldn't make it rocket science, and we shouldn't try to do something that is unique, totally unique to this town. What we need is basic guidelines. As I said, there are building requirements, in terms of, what kind of facilities you need for windows, for stairs, for elevators, depending on how high you go. There are all those sorts of things, and they exist. And we should not be trying to reinvent the wheel, which is what I'm afraid we're trying to do.
There is no attempt to reinvent the wheel, Jay, but I worked in a community for 3 years who had a form-based code who made a fatal flaw. Their form-based code didn't have any reference to their architectural design guidelines. Now, in the 3 years I was with that community, did I advise any applicant that there was a fatal flaw between the form-based code and the design guidelines? No, but a savvy attorney who would have read the regulations would have realized that. So that community had a group at a charrette develop the regulation and then adopted what was supposed to be a draft model, became the real reg. And I had a few $100,000 before I left that community in my capital improvement program to fix that potential, what I felt was a fatal flaw. So I don't want that to reoccur by just pulling a model from another community that has a lack of some interrelationship. We have a very complicated zoning code, and we can fix parts of it quickly, but I don't want to just add another Band-Aid somewhere. So Jay, to your point, I want a really good workable document. There are examples of it from around the country with a qualified consultant who does this every single day. We can get it done. Some of it is access to resources. And as we go into budget time, I may be asking for some as a department. But again, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. The examples exist out there. but I need buy-in from the board and from EDC and others within the community to make it a successful program.
So what's
Jamie,
your best
what I
guess
would like
how
to
long
ask
it would
for-
take for this to be completed?
That's
You-
what I'd like to ask for. I'd like to ask for a timeline that is going to get us to a completion date. We should have a goal. I've been asking for that forever. Let's
All right,
say
but
it's
it's
going to be done by
Jay,
X date and
Jay,
we got to work to it.
Jay, it's totally unrealistic for this guy that you've met for the first time tonight to come down and say you want a timeline. He can
I don't want
come
it
back
tonight.
after he looks at our report and reads looks at the PowerPoint and give him a break. You're killing him. And it's not, I know it's not your intent, but let up.
One more thing, Larry. I would just like him to do that.
I'm going to have the
exactly.
moderator
And I-
mute you.
And I would like to see a date. We're going to have it done by this date. This is our goal. We don't always meet our goals, but one thing I've seen in this town is we never establish goals. And then if we do establish a goal, we can always push it out, but we always have that goal in front of us.
All right,
So
we'll
that's
have
what
a
I'm
goal.
asking
We'll
for.
have a
If we
goal.
say
But
2 years.
we'll
If we say
have a
2
goal. We'll have a goal for him to come back in 3 months with some kind of a plan.
That's perfect.
He's new.
That's
All his
perfect.
staff is new.
That's perfect. And now
Let
he
him
knows-
educate himself on the deal. Enough said. No more. I mean, it's enough. He gets it.
This
Yeah,
hasn't been a personal attack.
No.
It certainly
Jay,
hasn't.
Jay, I understand your passion. I understand probably your frustration. I've been in communities where I've become the planner or the planning director, where they've spent 3 years doing in Connecticut, a plan of conservation and development, or in Rhode Island, a comp plan. And, with the right staff and the right financing in some of those communities, we can do a comp plan or a comprehensive plan in less than 12 months and for under $100,000. It's about articulating your goals and promising on deliverables, but there has to be buy-in and resources on the community. And it doesn't always need to be financial, but staff is also financial too. We handle a significant permitting load within the office. And a lot of times we spend a lot of resources moving paper from the left side of the desk to the right side of the desk, which leaves us with limited time for actual planning. We're trying to handle that internally. But I've been here, I think, since September 16th. I'm getting a much better handle on it than I did September 17th or September 18th. But I got to work with the planning board and look at what they have for their bucket list and go from there. We're just finishing up the comp plan. That, to me, that will be the first step and a major accomplishment that the town's been trying to do for the last 3 years. From that comp plan, it'll give us some guidance on what we can tick off next.
I think you just hit again on part of the frustration. The town's been trying to do that for 3 years. And what we're pointing out is that there are a lot of things that have slipped in timeline. So yeah, you're new, and I think it is reasonable to give you some time. I was thinking the next meeting a month from now, but if it needs to be 3 months, then fine. But we really should be operating according to a reasonable timeline. And that's not to say that your job is easy, but I know that I was told that these changes to the zoning would be done by the end of the year. And it seems now like it's just bleeding well out into 2021.
Yeah.
And who knows, 22 maybe.
I've been
All
on.
right, now I'd like to go on to the next topic on
One
the
more thing,
agenda,
please.
please.
One more thing.
No more. All right, Brian, put a note in that we're gonna add this on under old business, Old Tower Hill Road update.
Yep.
And you and Jamie can look at our product. It was really good and was accepted and not with, I mean, they weren't, the planning board wasn't objecting to, I won't say anything, but I will say 90% they were in agreement. All right. And they loved the fact that the property owners and stakeholders were in it. But I think we've killed this topic. We'll get an update next month, and we'll go from there.
I think it's important that Jamie has a good perspective about what we've been doing. And I've been on the committee since 2012. And since 2012, we've been working on comp plans. Amen.
All right, any new business openings or closings? I told you about the cinemas. Any updates? Planet Fitness has started doing the construction inside the building, and with a target date of January 1.
And any progress on that, that project up near 138, the Vineyard Hotel?
Shepherd's Run.
Shepherd,
Yeah, Shepherd's Run.
Shepherd's Run, yeah.
Again, the initial comp plan was changed for them. The zoning was changed for them.
Right.
We're going to be coming in for conceptual design and density. So that project is moving forward. I have draft architecturals that are in my office for the building renovation. So they are moving forward. It hasn't stalled.
Nice.
It hasn't stalled, but it has slowed down because Ryan was having problems on the financing end due to the pandemic, and lenders being less willing to fund hospitality projects
Yeah.
when nobody can
Primarily
travel anywhere.
hotel rooms and overnight stay.
yeah.
Of course, now
Well,
is-
this committee can be an advocate for that that group that's trying to produce it. That's one of our roles and one of our charges. So if, when you're talking with them, if they want to talk to a friendly group that would support their progress and give them little pointers, we're more than able to entertain them at a meeting whenever they would like it.
Certainly, that would be a great idea, and maybe in terms of business planning, when the project gets a little farther along, that would be a great idea for them. I'm happy to say that to this extent, from most points, the project concept has been well received. There are some legitimate issues that need to be addressed, but overall, it's been very well received.
All right. What about Brood Awakenings and the old Feet First building? Anything more updates on that one?
I don't know.
That building's
anything
for
about
sale. That building's for sale, Larry.
It's been for sale. It's under contract, subject to them getting all the necessary permits to do what they wanted, including a drive-through.
the drive-through.
And they've had public input before the planning board. And they've redesigned because the neighbors didn't want the exiting traffic going on the back road. And that's as far as I've heard. And the applicant, Brood Awakenings, was very accommodating to the neighbors. So I just don't know where, maybe COVID has held that up, or you guys haven't seen them come in at all, or?
We could look a little more in depth to that and try and give you an update at your next meeting.
Do they own the property now, or how can they be advocating for changes when they don't own the property?
Because they can apply
Yeah.
as the person that's buying the property. It's subject to all the necessary approvals to be able to do what they want. It's all under the existing
As long as
owner.
under the existing owner, okay.
Yeah, it's very common, Jay, with new business projects for the potential owner to come through and get approvals before they invest in the property.
So the original owner is actually getting the approval, and then the potential owner will go ahead with the purchase. So
Yeah,
it's
he's just using
contingent
his
sale.
name. Just using his name.
Yeah.
The Brood Awakening spending all the money. What about the commercial property behind the bowling alley? That's the that's Sweener, Hallberg again. with, I think, cottages, maybe?
Oh, yeah,
No,
on Holly Street.
Yeah, Holly Street.
those were kind of laid out as duplex units. That's moving through the permitting process. It just went through technical review a couple weeks ago. So again, that is a project going through the process moving forward.
All right, I think that's zoned commercial though, right? Did he have to get his zone change? Has he gotten his zone change?
No, I don't
Yes,
think-
that is in place to move forward as a project with the appropriate zoning in place.
Okay. Okay. Any other commercial property or businesses that anybody is concerned about or heard about or?
Well, I just I had to go to the doctor
Mhm.
for an annual inspection, and the doctor has moved to South County Commons. And I was surprised how many things are closed up there, restaurants, and
Yeah.
the Brood Awakenings is gone. I mean, it looks like a ghost town.
Yeah.
Well, I've told you guys at Pier Cleaners how it devastated us at the very beginning. And then come summertime, the tourists were here and we picked up and we're doing maybe 85% of what we did last year. And that was really good because my industry still is at 50% of last year. And a lot of places, a dry cleaner in Wesley closed, sold his property, got out of the business completely. And that's that we expect to lose about 30%, 33% of the industry with this pandemic. And my concern is in the last couple of weeks, it's gone from 85% of last year down to 75 to 70% of last year. And I think it's with all the concerns of the virus spreading that people aren't going out to dinner anymore. They're not going to visit family or friends or have events, even though they were only small, they could have them. And I think it's going to affect, I'm telling you now, it's going to affect the local small businesses. It's
Yes.
we're in a reverse direction right now.
Yep.
So any news on the historic highway, US 1?
Oh, yeah, that committee hasn't, all I heard was that that committee is moribund. They haven't been called, they haven't met in 3 months.
More than that, I'm on that
Oh,
committee.
you're on that committee, Larry. Yeah.
6 months. I mean, it was with Jay, and I haven't seen an email or anything. It's dormant right now.
Yeah.
And I get
Larry,
it.
we
There's a
are
pandemic.
looking to get that committee back together in the next month or so.
Yeah, I'm not complaining at all because, you know, there's only so much you can do. And there's been turnover and it's not a high priority in the grand scheme of things.
Is there any update on the Snyder property up in West Kingston?
There you go. That's another one. Thank you, Tom.
Because you know why? I hear about Amazon and others opening the data centers. And that place is large. It's got very clean power. You know, does it have a possible use as a data center?
It's got
You know,
5G.
they just load it with routers and, you know,
Right.
it wouldn't bring a whole lot of jobs, but it would utilize the facility. And it sounds like Snyder's almost ready to give it away. Sorry?
Nothing has crossed my desk, but I'll
Okay.
make a note of that.
That's a good point, Tom. I hadn't thought of that.
I hadn't until I heard about all the data centers and, you know, that are being driven by the iCloud use.
Yeah. Yeah.
A lot of the data centers, when they're going in, they're looking for municipalities who may own their own utility or they have access to other utilities because they can negotiate a rate very different than a larger corporate setting that's controlled by a government agency at the state level.
Right. I mean, what we've heard is that the power, first of all, they've got a lot of power already there, but the power is particularly clean. It's must be right off the main distribution lines.
Well,
So-
they have scrubbers in there, Tom.
Yeah.
They have
Yeah.
equipment in there to make it clean.
Okay. And
Remember,
since it's
along
an-
with
since it's an idle facility, it might have that use.
along with the data center, because in Simsbury we had a data center for one of the large insurance companies. Along with the data center comes the diesel generators when the power goes down.
Yep.
So that's the only negative side of that, is that if there is a power outage, we are a shoreline community and we're susceptible to those, both for that wet snow load and a thing called a hurricane.
Yeah.
You do have that advent of the generators running for.
Well,
I
you
think
need
they've got
to-
some e-gens in place there.
Yeah.
The Tesla battery, the lithium batteries that Tesla's making now. I'm gonna
I'm
switch
all
my,
for that over time. My
I'm
son
gonna
wants one at our house.
I'm gonna switch my lead acid batteries, my storage system to
Lithium.
those in a few years.
But see, it's what I was alluding to earlier. This is, having gone through that facility numerous times, it's another building in town with cavernous space in it. And when we're talking about data centers, they're not as big as they used to be. I built 4 of them myself. But the data centers, for example, when I worked for HP, our data center in Plano was underground and had about 2 acres of raised floor space on it with huge mainframes and everything else. Data centers today don't have a lot of that stuff anymore. They tend to have much smaller machines, albeit the machines run a lot hotter than
Right.
the iron did. And when they get power, the power that comes in there usually is on 3-phase. It goes through transformers and it gets stepped down to 208. The machines themselves run on 208 electricity as opposed to the big, 440 and all that other stuff.
Right.
You could put multiple data centers in that building.
Right.
Multiples.
Exactly.
And all they would do if you want to have shared space is build cages in there and then have the shared electricity, the shared internet, and shared private network if they have that, and shared infrastructure, shared air conditioning, and then you're off and running. You've got essentially data center condominiums in there. And it's a good spot to put it because it's far enough away from the water. Diesel generators, yes, would come into play there. It's near a rail line, so people could get off to go work in there.
Exactly.
One thing that it really would need, well, we've got hotels for people to stay and then work in the place. You just have to market it. Somebody's going to get out there and market this to Amazon, to all of the cloud computing companies, that this space is available and it's available for rent at a very reasonable price.
Right.
So there you go, Tom.
Yeah, the retrofit cost wouldn't be that high, I think.
No, the infrastructure's there.
Yeah. So
So
All right.
Tom, why don't you look into who needs data center space?
I could do that. Yeah. I mean, it's the big guys, I'm thinking, the Amazons, the
Yeah.
Microsofts.
Yeah, well,
Oh, yeah, I can do that.
they aren't gonna make us their headquarters, but
No,
if they need. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
I was going to say, they also want to have it distributed, not just to
Distributed,
have it
yeah.
in one place in
Yeah.
Nevada, so there are advantages to more localized distribution, but
Yeah,
again, I'm not an expert on it, but I'll check.
Yeah, that would be good.
Yeah.
And then maybe we could invite Rob to write him letters and tell him we have space.
Yeah.
Cisco, I believe, started in Bakeford Properties in North Kingston in one of the old mills.
Yeah.
Cisco.
Long time ago.
Huh.
Cisco, yeah. Yep, the predecessor to Cisco. the company that became Cisco. So, all right.
Sorry,
So-
that was one stock I didn't jump on.
Yeah.
All right, any update? The last item on the agenda is any update from the planning staff or planning department, but I think we hit a lot of it.
I think you've been pretty thorough.
All right, one of the things that Brian and Jamie, I have a self-imposed deadline of 9 o'clock. We don't do late. We try to keep it fresh and invigorating for a maximum of 2 hours. I think we've done that tonight. The next meeting will be, it's right in the agenda in December. And I think we've added anything. I would say that if anybody wants to add an item to the agenda, please do so 2 weeks in advance. Because Brian's got posting deadlines and that kind of stuff, and the towns, so we don't violate any open meetings laws.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else? Hearing none, all those in favor of adjournment, do I hear a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Susan, yeah, there you go. The second by Henry, all those in favor?
Right.
Aye, opposed, unanimous.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for joining us, Jamie.
Yep.
Thank, nice meeting you, Jamie.
All right,
Welcome,
Larry.
welcome.
What a welcome meeting.
Like you said, you were shooting rubber bullets, but I'm on Zoom. None of them hit me.
Well, we'll see. We know where you work.
Can't get in the building, COVID-19.
Yep.
Check the bushes.
Okay, thank you.
All right, be good.
Thank you.
All right,
Good
good
night.
night, everybody.
Good night.
Happy Thanksgiving.